Hello everybody. This is Vineet Sharma, the Director of Center of Supply Chain Excellence at St. Louis University, and I have the pleasure of having Frank Fischer with us. Thank you, Frank, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. I love the opportunity.
We will start with the first very obvious question. If you could please introduce yourself to everybody.
I sure can. My name is Frank Fischer. I've been doing logistics and supply chain work my whole career for more years than I care to even mention, probably since high school. So about 50 years, believe it or not. That's a little crazy. I
Wow.
can't even fathom that myself. But right out of high school, I was unloading trucks and doing receiving and putting
Hmm.
stuff away in a warehouse at a mobile home manufacturing company in
Hmm.
Phoenix. But I really got my start at Digital Equipment Corporation, which is a Fortune 500 company back in the mid to late 70s and 80s and so forth. So I worked there for 15 years or so. And so I got a good flavor for working on the customer side of the table. I
Hmm.
was working in a manufacturing plant in Phoenix for the first, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. And then I got hired by the corporate organization. And so I managed van line contracts on transportation.
Hmm.
And so computers were very big back in those days, and so they filled semi trucks.
Oh
So
yeah.
I was responsible for making sure we had van line contracts in place to haul computers around.
Hmm.
And so when digital started to downsize over a number of years, I had an opportunity to change jobs, and I moved to Chicago and worked for Beacon's Van Lines for 4 years, and managed their logistics operation as director of logistics. I learned a lot about being on the service provider side, the trucking side of the business, and we did a lot of
Hmm.
computer and copy machine distribution.
Uh-huh.
Mayflower had our paths had crossed with some leaders at Mayflower over those years while I was at Beacons, and so Mayflower hired me to move to Indianapolis and
Hmm.
actually start Mayflower Logistics. So I was the founder of a small, you know, wholly owned subsidiary at
Hmm.
Mayflower Transit in
Wow.
Indianapolis.
Wonderful.
United Van Lines out of St. Louis bought Mayflower about a year after I was there in 95.
Hmm.
And in 97, they moved us to St. Louis. We changed the name of the company from Mayflower Logistics to something that was brand neutral between United and Mayflower because now they're owned by the same holding company. So it had to be
Hmm.
a name other than Mayflower and United. So we came up with a different name, Insight Logistics, back in that time period. And
Uh-huh.
I worked there for another 12 or so years. And then I left there and started Pure Logistics in 2006. And,
Hmm.
uh, so it's been a long, wonderful career. I
Yeah.
didn't even know
No.
I was an entrepreneur or a business uh, leader until I got a taste of it. And even then, doing it for a big company like United is way different than doing it on your own. So
Oh, it is.
I got schooled those first few years, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. So this has been a very exciting journey. I mean, very inspiring too, and
Thank you.
how one thing led to the other. Um, do you want to talk a little bit about Pure Logistics? What it is that you do? What does your company do? It'll be great if you could.
Sure, I'd love to. We are in logistics part of the industry that nobody really thinks about. When
Mm,
people think about logistics and distribution and supply chain, they
hmm.
have a tendency to think about car parts and manufacturing. They have a tendency to think about, what's on your grocery shelves. How did the stuff get into Kohl's? How did it get into Lowe's and all the consumer products and all the stores,
Exactly.
big box stores and small stores, niche stores, but it's all about merchandise. Uh,
Hmm.
Very few people stop to think about how did the shelves get there that the merchandise sits on? How did
Yeah.
the furniture get into the office buildings that we occupy? How did the furnishings get into the hotels and the hospitals and the equipment, that
Yep.
run this country in the service industries? That's what we do. So our
Wow.
business is to provide occupancy. We help customers renovate and prepare buildings
Mm-hmm.
for occupancy. And that doesn't mean the construction part, although we
Mm.
work with construction companies.
Yep.
We do the what's called the FF&E, the furniture, fixture, and equipment that go into buildings.
Very
So,
interesting.
so if somebody buys our service, all of our service, we could in fact go to a building, let's say a hotel, because we
Mm.
do a lot of work in the hotel sector,
Mm.
and we have a network of liquidation companies
Mm.
that would go in and buy the product and resell it and take it out of the rooms. That's the
Mm.
first thing that has to happen because the general contractor can't even come in and demo the rooms. They can't demolish
Absolutely.
them until the furniture's out. So we take
Absolutely.
all the assets out of
Mm-hmm.
there and liquidate those assets for the client. And sometimes the client
Mm-hmm.
wants to keep some of them, so we put them in our warehouse. Sometimes
Sure.
they want to keep them on site and they redistribute them to another hotel or whatever. But
Yep.
somebody is taking a hold of all the contents of that hotel and
Mm.
getting it out of there so construction can start.
Yeah.
And frequently, it's not gut the building. Frequently, it's a renovation. The hotel has to keep operating because they have to keep making money. They
Yep.
have to have a revenue source to pay the bills.
Correct.
So we'll take out 2 floors at a time or something, and we'll
Mm-hmm.
liquidate those 2 floors.
Mm.
Construction happens on those 2 floors.
Mm.
About the time that they're ready to turn the new floors completely
Mm.
renovated back to the owners, we're
Mm.
taking out the next 2 floors. So it
Ah,
becomes a feeding cycle. We're on site
gotcha.
the whole time. We're
Mm.
liquidating for part of the time and we're installing for another part.
Mm-hmm.
So then another service that we offer is
Mm.
freight management from around the world. So we
Mm.
will, in fact, broker container loads and truckloads and LTL shipments from all over the country, all over the
Mm.
world. A
Mm.
lot of furniture comes from China and Vietnam these days, and
Yeah.
we will broker loads all the way through to the United States and to a moving and storage warehouse. Most
Ah.
hotels can't take 300 armoires at a time. And
Mm-hmm.
even if they could, we're only renovating 60 rooms at a time, for example,
Correct.
in cadence I mentioned. So,
Yeah.
there has to be a stopgap there. So we will accumulate all the inventory at a local warehouse.
Yeah.
And so there could be tens of thousands of items in the warehouse, three,
Mm.
four, 500 different part numbers of items that go into the warehouse
Yeah.
and sit there. And then we deliver them out in basically room kits. We deliver everything that is required to reinstall the rooms. And so
Mm-hmm.
we contract the carriers for the transport, we contract the moving and storage warehouse for the
Mm-hmm.
storage,
Mm-hmm.
and then we contract an installation company to install the products. And when we say
Gotcha.
installation, we're talking about cleaning the walls to hang the headboards and
Mm.
to hang the artwork and the mirrors and when you got a 70-80 pound mirror and you don't want it to fall on a child, it's got
Oh
to be
boy.
put up very, very well,
Right.
and pleated in a way that it can't move with security hardware and so forth. So
Yeah.
first step is we go in and do the hangables and then a lot the bedding usually because you got to build the headboard and all that,
Yeah.
and then bring in the loose furniture. And all the while you're working with the client on what's the inventory at the warehouse? Has everything come in from China?
Yeah.
Where are we going to have gaps between the inbound raw material or the inbound furnishings and
Mm-hmm.
the construction schedule and when we're supposed to fit up those rooms?
Yeah.
And do we have any shortages? Do we have any damages? What's the inventory for the room? We have to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
every room has not only got a lamp on the
Yeah.
table,
Yeah.
but there's got to be a shade on the lamp and there's got to be a bulb
True.
inside the lamp. So there's tons and tons of detail to manage, especially when you have a hotel that might have 17 different room types. So not all
Mm-hmm.
the rooms are the same. You got kings and
Exactly.
double queens, and then you've got American with Disabilities Act rooms, ADA rooms, and you got
Yeah.
elevator rooms that are slightly different shape because the elevator's in the middle of a part of the room or whatever the
Yeah.
case. So now the 6 foot armoire doesn't fit, but the 4 foot armoire does. So,
Yes.
there's a science to this whole thing.
So
And so
let's.
that's what we do for a living. We open restaurants. We've worked for um, Wolfgang Puck. We've worked for Dave Ramsey. We've done
Mm,
um, work for David Yerman on the retail side. We've done hotels all over the country for
wow.
Ritz-Carlton, um,
So
Four
so if you
Seasons, and then on and on and on. The Omnis and the Westons, and so
so if you
we
are
do
staying in a
about
hotel, there is
35
a
projects. Huh?
if you are staying in a hotel, there is a good chance that you would have touched it in some way,
Yes,
shape, or form.
yes. At least the brand. We'll do about 35 of those kind of projects a year, usually a
Uh,
dozen or so of the retail or restaurant type of projects. And most of
excellent.
them include at least taking the furniture out and
Mm,
bringing new furniture in and providing
mm.
warehouse, and then as well as freight sometimes.
So how big is your company now, Frank?
So our revenues are 12 million.
Okay.
And
Very
we're
good.
kind of a unique company because we're virtual. First, you can tell from my description, we're a management company, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
not really on site, although
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow my operations director is flying to Miami because we've got some challenges down there and we need to get our
Ah,
hands on it. But most of the time
sure.
we manage remotely. We've got 10 employees. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
works from their home. I've got several in different states around the country, so they don't have to be in
Mm.
St. Louis to do this work. Um,
Wow.
and we've outsourced a lot of the overhead kind of stuff. So I've got a CPA firm that does the billing and the receivables and the collections and all that. I've got
Mm.
third-party IT support. We've got a proprietary system that we've sunk a lot of money into for over the last decade that's
Mm.
specific to this industry.
Mm.
We couldn't find a supply chain like a WMS or even
Mm.
an ERP that could pop out of the box and do what we do
Yeah.
because uh, our business model is a bit unique.
Mm.
It doesn't even follow some of the standard supply chain rules. Like
Mm.
typically, a item master in an ERP and in a
Yeah.
WMS um, doesn't allow for duplicate items.
Correct.
But at the Hilton in Hilton Head,
Mm.
a GR100 might be an end table, and
Mm.
that same table or that same GR100 at the
Mm.
Omni in San Diego
Mm.
could be a lamp.
Oh, wow. So that.
GR stands for guest room, and then it's a random number.
Mm.
It's every project, every customer is different. So, but they recycle some of the same numbers in
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
nomenclature. So, we had to build
Huh.
something that was insulated against that kind of thing.
Very
Also,
interesting.
when we get an inventory list, we'll get one line item that says,
Mm.
this is a headboard. Well, in
Mm.
fact, the first receipt and we
Mm.
unload the container and
Mm.
one headboard has 5 components. Well, we
Yeah.
have to track each component. So therefore,
Absolutely.
now we have to create a part number that's a GR100 A, B, C, D, and E, for example, if it's
Yeah.
5 pieces, and keep them grouped together so that one can't
Gotcha.
go to the site without the other ones. So when you start
Absolutely.
peeling the onion back in this industry, like many, it
Yeah.
gets very, very complicated. And the clients rely on you to get everything in the right room, in the right
Yeah.
window of time for the price that you quoted.
Absolutely.
You got to be perfect. And every time they don't rent the room, we just did the Ritz Carlton
Mm.
Dallas earlier this year, finished it.
Mm. Mm.
And I mean, they had rooms, suites that were going for 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 a night.
Oh,
So
wow.
if you run a couple of weeks late on turning over a room back there and there's liquidated damages tied to the contract, which there frequently is,
Mm.
you could have a seven, eight, $10,000 per room chargeback on your
Wow.
contract. So I mean, it's significant enough that you got to have your act together. You got to
Oh
track
my God. Yeah.
all the line items and the purchasing purchase
Yeah.
orders and so forth to really
That,
provide an excellent service.
yeah. I mean, that sounds like a daunting task. I mean, you got to be perfect. You got to make sure that everything is delivered on site,
Yeah,
for each of your customer. And some of these customers have items that have the same name, but have a different purpose or a meaning, or they could be totally different physically. So
right, right.
that is a challenge. Now, in terms of the skills or the talent, is there any is there any way or any talent or type the skills that you look for in candidates when you hire in your organization, so to speak?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, we found out the hard way by
Mm,
thinking that we had the right people. And uh, so we look for folks that are somewhat linear thinkers, very logical, kind of engineering type. They need
mm,
to be very good at Excel or
mm,
understanding matrices.
mm,
Because if you think about it, we have to be able to take a list of items and then match it to what needs to go in every room. And if
right.
there's 20 different room types. So there's
Mm,
a bit of like math to it and tracking and interpretation, which
mm,
is very methodical. So we need people that think
mm.
somewhat methodically and linearly, that are very process oriented.
Makes sense.
The other thing that we discovered actually more in the last 5 or so years
Mm,
is we realized how important critical thinking is. And I
yeah.
define critical thinking by having the ability to look at a problem and
Mm,
not only solve that problem, but be able to interpret how does that problem affect this thing, this thing, this thing, and this thing, almost like
right.
a decision tree. If I go
Right.
here,
Mm,
how does it affect this branch off and these limbs and so forth?
mm,
Kind of a
mm,
strategic, anticipatory, deductive reasoning kind of thinking.
mm, 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 mm,
And that's important because we're solving dozens of problems every day, and some are very
mm,
complex. Some
mm,
of them sometimes are, hey, you're not going to get these part numbers because they're on back order. And
mm,
so, how can we rearrange the sequence
mm.
of the installation so that we can maximize the number of rooms available for rent while
Yeah.
we wait on this product? Or
Right.
can we not liquidate some of this stuff and reuse it during after renovation until
Right.
the new stuff gets here, and then swap out the new stuff for the stuff that should have been liquidated at the beginning? You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of that kind of thing. So when we hire, not
Mm.
only do we do face-to-face interviews, but we use DISC. We have a DISC assessment.
Huh.
It is I hesitate to call it a personality profile, but it's more like, how are you wired? Are you wired for critical thinking? Are you wired for intuitiveness? Or are you
Mm,
wired more on the artsy side? Are you a
mm,
better um, mechanic,
mm, mm-hmm.
react to a problem rather than be proactive in solving problems? How are
Mm-hmm.
you wired? And then based on your wiring, what are your motivators?
Mm,
Based on a person's character, how they were raised, what
mm.
turns you on, what turns you off, what are
Right.
you very good at, and how to communicate with that person. So we get a 65-page paper. It costs
Mm,
me a few $100 to get a profile done, but we
mm-hmm.
do it with the top 2 or 3 finalists for a job
Sure. Sure.
and see how these people are wired. The other
Mm,
thing that we do is I typically try to find people
mm,
in advance of needing them. I try not to hire them before I
mm-hmm.
need them, but I always want to identify it. So, for example, an estimator that we put on in May, I had been
Mm.
talking with her. Now she goes to my church. I've been singing with her for a long time, probably 6, 7 years, and I knew
Yeah.
right away after meeting her that she was the kind of person that fit our team and our model. The way she thought, what she did for a living at her other company, and so I kind of solicited her and then just slow played it. And then at one point, she finally said, I've been here 20 years and I'm
Yeah.
tired and I'm looking for something new. you know?
Mm-hmm.
I said, you got it,
Very
baby. You know?
good.
And so I tested her to make sure that my intuition was right, and it was. And
Uh-huh.
she's just been a rock star, you
There you
know.
go.
But
Mm.
but we worked on her long before we needed her so that we could fill the slots when the timing was right for everything.
And and
So
and Frank, I think, that is amazing. I think that the story that you just mentioned, it's very inspiring. I think, and it kind of goes both ways. I think I don't you think that students also kind of need to go out there and talk to various companies, not always with the intent that they will get a job right away,
right,
because it doesn't happen, right? But the more people you talk to, the more people that know you and know your character and your work ethics, the better, because
right.
there you increase your chance of getting a job, so to speak. Would you
Yeah,
agree?
absolutely right. I definitely agree. I don't think I have hired somebody. In fact, I know I haven't. In the last 10 years, I have not
Hmm.
hired anybody that wasn't a referral or
Hmm.
that I personally knew. And
Hmm.
that helps and it hurts in some ways because I've actually
Yeah.
hired friends, and now you got to trust. Can you maintain a friendship even through and separating the business
Yeah.
from the friendship thing?
Yeah.
But I believe it's worth the extra work because they have a little skin in the game. They're a little more
Yeah.
committed to you because there's a relationship there that goes deeper than just, what you had for breakfast and the morning meeting kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I'd much rather struggle with the relationship and have a
Hmm.
great solid employee there because usually it works out. I haven't had any
Hmm.
friendship explode because we work together. I've never had that. So,
No, and that's kudos to you. I think that speaks a lot about your style, your the culture that you have built at the
yeah,
organization.
yeah.
That's very inspiring.
And
Uh,
that's you
mhm.
just referenced something. If I can just do a quick tag on
Yes.
here, culture is very important. So
Yeah.
matching the people you're hiring with the culture of the company, and then communicating the culture and
Yeah.
reminding people of the culture. I mean,
Yeah.
up to and including. Oh, I don't have it right handy.
Yeah.
I bought mouse pads for everybody that have our four key values on them,
Excellent.
along with our brand promise. It's got to be creating success for all we serve, the right above my head here. And that,
Yep.
the having people that believe in it and are invested in it
Yep.
is a way to make sure you have the right people as well.
No,
So
absolutely.
anyway,
I
it's a good
mean,
point.
most companies that I've talked to and most of the executives that I've talked to, they strongly believe that it's important to hire candidates based on how well they fit into the culture or how coachable they are.
Mhm.
These are some of the things, in addition to, their aptitude and attitude and what have you. Having
Right,
technical knowledge is great, but if you don't have the right attitude and right work ethics, those technical knowledge is basically of no use, at least according to me. And pardon me if I'm speaking for everyone, but I feel like most executives that I've talked to truly believe that it's important to have the right work ethics, to right attitude, and if you're lacking a few technical skills, you can always learn it along the way, so to speak.
right. Totally agree. Totally agree.
And and Frank, any suggestion you have for our young students at St. Louis University? Any advice that you want to give them? Uh, Coming from you with so much of experience and done a lot of different things in life.
It's a very good question. I mean, education is a big piece of what we employers are looking for,
Mm,
but theory only takes you so far, so what's helpful is to be
mm,
open-minded, and as they reach out into the world to secure their post-college job, you
mm,
know, be willing to get your nails dirty, be
mm-hmm,
willing to dig in and to maybe not bottoms up because you've spent a lot of money on an MBA or some kind of a upper degree, but
Yeah.
at the same time, not everybody starts at the top, and
Uh,
I was
that's true.
unloading trucks and sweeping floors while I was going to college, but I learned
Yeah.
an awful lot about logistics and receiving and inventory just by being hands-on. And then when I learned the theory, I went, oh, that's how the whole thing plugs together.
Yeah.
Well, you can do the same thing in reverse, right? You can get the theory first, but
Yeah.
then, you know, sometimes you just have to kind of jump in and get your hands dirty and work the docks or work in
Mm-hmm.
the warehouse and understand the product, you
Yeah.
know, um, and to dive into the detail. Um,
Yeah.
Ken Munt, one of my first employers at the mobile home manufacturing company, he once said
Mm,
that today's detail is tomorrow's crisis. And so
mm,
I've never forgotten that, if you dig into the detail, you understand the detail, then you can
yeah.
make right anticipatory decisions to
Mm,
to improve a process, to prevent a problem, to shine your light in front of your management and your team
mm,
and so forth. And that's what helps people grow and be recognized and spotted. The can-do
mm.
attitude of jumping in and saying, I don't care what my job description is. I'm all in
Yep.
for the company and I want to help the company be successful. And I
Mm,
want to learn as much as I can, even if I'm learning something that's a little outside my lane. Don't pay as much
absolutely.
attention to lanes and job descriptions. Pay attention to how can I contribute? What can I do? And you'll learn every step of the way. And then you can
Mm,
apply the theory with what you're learning hands-on,
yep.
and it'll just round out your career, your opportunities, I think. So that's probably the
Oh,
best answer I could give.
no, this is absolutely great. I think this is $1 million advice, I would say, because and I felt like it was so genuine and so heartfelt. I mean, you said it from your heart. I mean, this is what we need to do. This is what everybody needs to do. It's not about your lane. It's not about your job description. It's about you being curious and you
Yeah,
offering your services to others whenever there is need. And along the way, you learn and you grow, and
yeah,
people look up to you. So no, that's a fantastic advice. And I also like what you said. Today's details is tomorrow's crisis,
right,
right? Is that
right.
right? Okay,
Yeah,
wonderful.
that's it.
I
That's
love
it.
that. I'm going to take it from you,
Be
Frank.
my guest. Be my guest. There have been just noteworthy things that people have taught me along the way, and you
Hmm.
just sometimes you pick things about a person that you don't want to be like, and then other times you go, "That is brilliant. I need to carry that with me forever." And
Yeah,
you know, it has helped quite a bit over my time.
absolutely. Well, I think we are at time, Frank. It
Okay,
was such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much, Frank, for taking the time to talk to me and to give the wonderful piece of advice that you've given to the students. We will put this on our LinkedIn and on our website, and we will share the details with you.
good deal. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I really enjoy it.
Absolutely, Frank. Take care.
All
Have a
right.
good evening.
Yep,
Take
you
care. Bye
too.
bye.
Bye bye.